Howdy folks, your Princess Kayatakayana here, and welcome to the finale of 40k month for this year. Now, it's been an interesting journey for me, honestly. I've been learning a lot about the things I do and don't like about the 40k games. Turns out I like them at their best when they are over the top, completely silly, ultra-violent, and just generally pretty absurd. You know, like for example, when you have an all-blue chapter of the Space Marines and you name them the Ultramarines, that's the kind of level of silliness I enjoy. Not going to beat about the bush any longer, let's jump straight into Space Marines on PC. Just a little aside before I start gushing properly here, folks. I didn't really have enough for a full video on this one, especially considering its age, but there's a game called Kill Team that came out about 3 months before Space Marine. It's a little twin-stick shooter. It's kind of like an appetizer to Space Marine's main course, and you can actually unlock some content in Space Marine from playing it. You can pick it up for like $1 or $2 on Steam at this point. I'd honestly recommend giving it a look. It's kind of an underrated gem. So, as I mentioned, I'm playing the PC version of Space Marine here. The game did release on the Xbox 360 and PS3 as well, but I'll be damned if, honestly, it wouldn't stand up visually to some of the games on the PS4 and the Xbox, whatever the hell the current one is. It's another game by Relic, and just like their earlier Dawn of War games, there is so much attention to detail here. It's honestly in places like this their love for 40k really shines through, like the little scraps of litany dangling from Captain Titus armour here, or, for those familiar with the Forces of Chaos from 40k, the foreshadowing of this relatively innocent-looking machine. Also on visuals, if it wouldn't make the video last forever, I would show you every single one of the death animations for various enemies. I love this shield one, but it's kind of hard to find a bad one when sword made out of a chainsaw is one of the default weapons. So the game is at its core a third-person shooter, but it's weird. It kind of combines the heavy, stomping feeling that you get from a game like Dead Space with the big, powerfully armoured Space Marine, and some of the stylish, fast-moving action that you see in a game like Devil May Cry. It's genius. The game opens letting you know exactly what it's all about. The ship carrying your troops to ground level is damaged, so the player character, the Captain Titus I mentioned earlier, grabs a jetpack and flies off to the nearest orc ship and just starts wrecking faces. The game makes some excellent choices early on here in some really subtle ways as well. Like, you know I said you started the game off with the chainsaw or chainsword that I mentioned? That's actually not entirely true. That item's nowhere to be seen for like the first 5 or 10 minutes, and the reason why struck me as soon as I found it. The sensation of finding and picking that thing up is so much better than just starting off the game with it. The game keeps up the pacing with the items as well. You are always finding new weapons and guns, and it's genuinely fun to experiment with them all. When I reviewed Deathwing, one of the things I talked about loving was the power armor itself, the way it gave you this big, heavy, powerful feel of just clomping and stomping around. Space Marine has managed to accomplish that, but it also lets you dodge roll and run and feel nimble. I don't know how they've managed this mix, honestly. So I mentioned all the guns feel really great to use and experiment with, but every great gun needs a great target. And I am delighted to say Space Marine succeeds here as well. Our enemies mostly are the circa Dawn of War 1 orcs. They are big, they are dumb, they are violent, and they are completely hilarious. It feels so satisfying to shut one up mid-wow with a headshot or chainsaw gouge. So later in the game, spoilers I guess, we get attacked by the Forces of Chaos, because of course we do, it's a game about Space Marines. And I will say they're satisfying. Just look at this takedown. Titus really wants this guy dead. But ironically they don't have the same chaotic melee feel to them that the orcs do, which is where I took the most fun from the game. Now, you may notice that I have not discussed the plot that much so far, and you'd be absolutely right because it is a 40k Space Marines game. The orcs have a thing, they shouldn't be allowed to have it. Chaos wants the same thing, they shouldn't be allowed to have it either. That's pretty much it. I will say though that the characterization of the AI teammates throughout the story is weirdly supportive. I don't know if this is a trait of the Ultramarines chapter that I'm not aware of or something, but we didn't get down to the game of point the finger at everyone else for being a heretic up until like the last 10 minutes of the plot. It's actually kind of adorable. Speaking of the AI squad mates, and I will remind you that my opinion on AI is Sheva not Snarf. You can see what that's about from the little card that appears above my head over here somewhere. They are not much use when it comes to a fight. But they don't need babysitting either, they just sort of do their own thing. They're actually mostly around for the chatter that goes on between fights, and I will say the 1 or 2 sections they weren't there, I did miss that, so they're obviously doing something right. Future Ayana, we're looking at me again. Oh. Let me see. Well, the health bar on the hood's kind of placed weirdly low. The difficulty curve gets kind of steep towards the end. The sentry guns seem to have kind of low health for being sentry guns. This fight here isn't particularly fun. So on the note of criticism, I remember when this game came out in September 2011. Those heady days, we'd all just come out of the cinema from seeing Never Back Down to The Beatdown and stuff. I read a review in a magazine of Space Marine, and it said that the jetpack was one of the worst things in the game. The fact that 2 or 3 times you used it, it was just dull and pointless and there was no sense of using it. And I only have one thing to ask about this. Are you bloody insane? I have a jetpack, I have a giant lightning-powered sledgehammer, and the game is encouraging me to charge headfirst at the enemy and treat their vital parts like watermelons. Look at this! Do I have to explain why this is fun? In fact, you know what? If I have to explain why this is fun, we're not going to be friends. You can stop watching, and if you're friends with that reviewer, you can stop watching anyway. So, I know I've been gushing. We do have one more positive to talk about here, though, and it's something that might be because the game is 9 years old, and it's something I don't think I'll ever praise again. I'm going to praise a game for something that's not there. Not once in the entire game are you asked to level up your marine, your weapons, your squad mates, or anything else. You find new weapons as you go, I mentioned that, and you get the jetpack occasionally. That's it. And it is perfect. Looking back to Deathwing as our last Space Marine game, the inclusion of these things just felt like an obligation to the idea that they should be there. And their absence here almost gives the gameplay this pure, uncorrupted feel to it. Gods, I've been playing 40k games too long at this point. I'm starting to accuse others of heresy. Ugh. So, we are absolutely ending on a high note for the first 40k month here though, folks. A first playthrough of the game will run you about 8 hours or so, which is every bit as long as it needs to be without overstaying its welcome. Sadly, the ending sets you up for a sequel that we didn't get and probably aren't ever going to. Wikipedia will tell you this was due to poor sales, but the game actually sold over expectations. Quick side note on that, Wikipedia will no longer tell you they were cancelled due to poor sales, because I changed Wikipedia, they kept my change and then banned me for vandalism, which should tell you everything you need to know about editing Wikipedia pages. It's not worth your effort. Ultimately, the reason we didn't get those sequels, because there were 2 planned, is actually the closure of THQ, which affected so many of Relic's projects, especially their 40k ones. They still own the rights to Dawn of War, but not Space Marine. I'm not entirely sure if that's because Space Marine is already a brand name or something. It's very complicated. It is kind of crushing, though, because ultimately, this could have a remaster and it would sell so many, and maybe we then get those final 2 games in the trilogy. They've done it with Darksiders, they could absolutely do it here, if they can work with Games Workshop. I, for one, would love to see it, and that's where I'm going to leave 40k month, on a note of hope for another Space Marine. Next week, folks, we will be taking a look at Mario Party. I will see you all then. Until then, peace. I'll stick this on the end of the video, I think. Someone wanted to come and say hi, folks. If you see the little cat on my logo, that's this. This is Medivh. You say hi to the world, Medivh. She's been making lots of noises and causing lots of outtakes. Anyway, you go on.